Imagine waking up to the blaring sound of an emergency alert on your phone. You check your portfolio, and the markets are in an absolute freefall. The price of oil just shattered historical records, inflation is spiraling completely out of control, and the global supply chain has violently snapped overnight. For the last 3 weeks, you have been told by the mainstream media that the military operations in the Middle East were precise, contained, and completely under control. But what if the very foundations of the global economy are quietly burning right before our eyes? We are now entering day 22 of the unprecedented, devastating war involving the United States, Israel, and Iran. The narrative you are being fed on evening television is dramatically shifting right now, but the raw data on the ground tells a completely different, terrifying story. Are we watching the final hours of a contained geopolitical conflict, or the violent opening chapter of a massive global economic reset? Welcome back to Dollar Endgame. If you want the unfiltered truth about global macroeconomics, geopolitics, and how these massive systemic shocks directly impact your wealth, you are in exactly the right place. We do not just read the sanitized press releases here. We dig deep into the financial plumbing of the world to show you what is actually happening. Today, we are breaking down the shocking developments on day 22 of the Iran war, the secret moves happening in the global oil markets, and the massive flight of capital happening right now as the ultra-rich desperately scramble for the exits. Grab a coffee, sit down, and let's dive in. For exactly 22 days, the world has watched an absolutely relentless bombing campaign. What started as a highly targeted operation has rapidly spiraled into one of the most intense and complex kinetic conflicts of the entire 21st century. As of this morning, the human toll is absolutely staggering. Over 1,300 people have been killed in Iran. Over 1,000 have lost their lives in Lebanon, 15 in Israel, and tragically, 13 United States military personnel have been killed in action. Millions of innocent civilians have been displaced across the region, creating a humanitarian nightmare that is spilling over the borders. The infrastructure damage is nearly incalculable, with entire power grids and industrial hubs reduced to smoldering ash. But here is where the political messaging from Washington is suddenly clashing violently with the reality on the ground. In the last 24 hours, President Donald Trump stood outside the White House and completely changed the entire tone of this war. He told reporters that the United States is getting very close to its primary military objectives and is actively considering winding down the kinetic operations against Iran. The administration is attempting to claim a massive, historic tactical victory. They are publicly stating that the U.S. military has completely degraded Iranian ballistic missile capabilities, utterly destroyed their defense industrial base, eliminated their naval and air force capabilities, and ensured that Tehran will never get close to nuclear capability. On paper, it sounds like an absolute crushing triumph of American military hegemony. But zoom out to the bigger picture. Is the war actually ending, or is this a desperate, calculated pivot? President Trump explicitly ruled out a formal ceasefire, and if you actually look at the actions of the Iranian military today, they are certainly not acting like a defeated force that has had its strategic infrastructure entirely erased. In a massive and highly concerning escalation, Iran just launched 2 intermediate-range ballistic missiles directly at Diego Garcia. For those who do not actively track military logistics, Diego Garcia is a highly classified critical joint U.S.-UK military base located deep in the Indian Ocean. It is a massive, incredibly secure hub for American stealth bombers and vital naval assets. The fact that Iran can still project force and attempt a precision strike on a strategic asset that far away completely contradicts the official narrative that their military capabilities are entirely in ruins. Furthermore, a high-ranking official in Tehran has already firmly stated that they are deeply skeptical of Washington's sudden talk of winding down. Iran's foreign minister has completely rejected the concept of a temporary pause, demanding a complete and total end to the war with absolute, ironclad geopolitical guarantees. They are digging in, fortifying their surviving bunkers, and refusing to surrender. Meanwhile, in a sign of how deeply taxing this operation has been on American hardware, a U.S. aircraft carrier has literally been forced to move away from the conflict zone for major repairs after a dangerous onboard fire. So why is the administration suddenly signaling a burning desire to pack up and go home? The real answer isn't happening on the smoking battlefields. It is happening in the bond market, the oil exchanges, and the global banking sector. To understand the true hidden motives behind Day 22, you have to follow the money. The United States military is currently burning an astronomical amount of cash every single day to keep advanced fighter jets in the air and incredibly expensive missile interceptors firing. But the real existential threat to the American empire isn't the monetary cost of the bombs. It is the catastrophic cost of energy. The entire global financial system rests on the fundamental assumption of relatively stable, dollar-denominated oil flowing freely out of the Persian Gulf. This war has thrown a massive, jagged wrench into that incredibly delicate system. In one of the most shocking and vastly underreported developments of this entire conflict, the U.S. government just blinked. The Trump administration has officially issued a provisional permit, essentially waiving massive, strict sanctions, to allow Iran to immediately export approximately 140 million barrels of crude oil that are currently sitting idle at sea. Let that sink in for a moment. I want you to truly understand the sheer irony of this maneuver. The United States is at war with a sovereign country, actively bombing its military and industrial infrastructure, yet Washington is simultaneously authorizing that exact same country to dump a massive ocean of crude oil onto the global markets to generate billions in revenue. Asian and Indian refiners are already aggressively eyeing these newly unsanctioned Iranian barrels, preparing massive purchase orders. Why on earth would the United States do this? Because they are absolutely terrified of the math. Global energy markets are incredibly anxious, and crude oil prices have been threatening to go completely parabolic. If oil prices spike to $150 or $200 a barrel, the inflationary shockwave that hits the United States will be apocalyptic. It would immediately reignite rampant domestic inflation, just as the Federal Reserve is trying to manage an incredibly fragile economy. The cost of manufacturing, the cost of global transportation, the cost of the food sitting on your local grocery store shelves, everything would skyrocket virtually overnight. The administration is desperately releasing this Iranian oil because they know that sky-high energy prices are the ultimate regime killer at home. They are trading geopolitical leverage for lower prices at the gas pump. But here is where it gets interesting, and this is the fatal flaw in their entire strategy. By officially allowing Iran to sell this oil, the United States is inadvertently funding the very war machine they are spending billions to dismantle. And more importantly, this blatant panic move is signaling to the rest of the world that the US dollar's absolute iron grip on the global oil trade is finally slipping. While the politicians in Washington try to thread this impossible economic needle, the smart money is already quietly running for the exits. The Persian Gulf is the undisputed financial epicenter of the Middle East, and for years, Dubai has been the ultimate safe haven for the world's ultra-rich. It has been a glittering oasis of absolute stability, zero-tax luxury real estate, and impenetrable banking secrecy. But this war is suddenly way too close for comfort. Over the last few weeks, the United Arab Emirates has had to repeatedly activate its advanced air defense systems to intercept dozens of terrifying incoming threats. Just days ago, the UAE successfully intercepted 15 deadly missiles and over 100 armed drones. The psychological barrier of invincibility has been permanently broken. The ultra-wealthy individuals and massive institutional funds based in Dubai are quietly but aggressively shifting their massive capital reserves out of the region. We are witnessing a massive silent capital flight of historic proportions. Where is all that money going? It is fleeing to jurisdictions that are perceived as completely untouchable by the current geopolitical crossfire. This massive movement of capital is quietly accelerating a megatrend that we have been warning about on this channel for months: the rapid, irreversible de-dollarization of the global economy. When the wealthy elites of the Middle East look at the current landscape, they see the United States heavily weaponizing the global financial system. They see severe sanctions being turned on and off like a light switch, purely based on Washington's immediate tactical needs. They realize that if their wealth is tied up in the traditional Western banking system, it can be frozen, seized, or massively devalued at a moment's notice. This brings us to the ultimate long-term consequence of Day 22. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, along with their new, powerful strategic partners, are watching this chaos unfold and taking meticulous, detailed notes. For them, this tragic war is not just a regional crisis. It is an incredible, once-in-a-lifetime geopolitical opportunity. Every single day that the United States is bogged down in the Middle East, burning billions of tax dollars and alienating critical regional partners, the BRICS alliance is moving significantly faster to build an alternative global financial architecture. Russia and China have already practically decoupled from Western financial hegemony. They are aggressively pushing for massive cross-border trade settlement entirely outside of the SWIFT system, utilizing the Chinese yuan, gold, and local domestic currencies. Now, with the U.S. selectively waiving sanctions on Iranian oil simply to save its own domestic markets, the BRICS nations have the perfect, unassailable argument to present to the global South. The argument is brutally simple. The U.S. dollar is no longer a stable, neutral global reserve asset. It is a highly volatile, highly politicized weapon that will eventually be turned against you. We are actively watching the fiery birth of a completely bifurcated global economy. In one corner, you have the decaying, debt-burdened Western fiat system, desperately trying to maintain absolute control over global energy flows through overwhelming military force and rapid money printing. In the other corner, you have a massive, resource-rich coalition of Eastern and Southern nations actively building a commodity-backed, decentralized trade network that completely bypasses New York and London. So, how do you protect yourself? If you are a retail investor watching this absolute chaos unfold on your screen, what is the rational, calculated response? When fiat currencies are heavily weaponized and global supply chains are physically threatened by intermediate-range ballistic missiles, you have to look for hard assets that exist entirely outside of that fragile system. Central banks around the world have been aggressively hoarding physical gold at record-breaking levels for the last 2 years. They already know that the fiat debt system is rapidly reaching its mathematical breaking point. But for the modern investor, the ultimate, frictionless lifeboat is Bitcoin. As this grinding war drags on, the core value proposition of a truly decentralized, politically neutral, highly liquid, and globally accessible digital asset becomes painfully obvious. Bitcoin cannot be sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department. It cannot be permanently destroyed by an Iranian ballistic missile strike. It does not rely on the physical military security of the Strait of Hormuz to instantly clear billion-dollar transactions. When the ultra-wealthy panic and desperately move their money out of Dubai, they are facing massive friction, endless compliance checks, and terrifying counterparty risks in the traditional banking sector. But a billionaire can move $1 billion worth of pure Bitcoin across the entire globe in 10 short minutes, for a total fee of about $3, with absolutely zero counterparty risk. No bank manager can stop it. No government can freeze it. As the geopolitical theater descends into total chaos, crypto is no longer just a highly speculative tech stock play. It is a fundamental, rock-solid macroeconomic insurance policy against the inevitable collapse of the legacy fiat system. The chaotic events of Day 22 are definitively proving that the United States cannot simply bomb its way out of a sovereign debt crisis or a massive global energy deficit. The winding down of this military conflict might look incredibly good on a White House press release, but the deep structural damage to the petrodollar has already been done. The global financial markets will remain incredibly volatile for the foreseeable future. You need to proactively position your portfolio for a world where inflation is deeply structural, essential energy is incredibly expensive, and the US dollar is slowly but surely losing its absolute, unquestioned monopoly on global trade. We are officially standing in the dollar endgame. The rules of the financial world are being violently rewritten right now, and if you are not paying strict attention, your life savings and your purchasing power will simply be wiped out in the geopolitical crossfire. Thank you so much for watching. In our next video, we are going to dive incredibly deep into exactly how the BRICS nations are currently weaponizing their massive gold reserves, and what that specifically means for your stock and crypto portfolio going into the crucial second half of the year. You absolutely do not want to miss that critical breakdown. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Do you actually believe the administration will wind down this war? Or are we just taking a temporary pause before a massive, unthinkable escalation? Let me know down in the comments below. I read every single one of them. If you found deep value in today's breakdown, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel right now, and hit the bell icon so you are notified the absolute second we post a new update. Stay safe out there, stay highly informed, and I will see you in the next one.